I had a little hiccup with our links during today, so I was like, oh look, a lot of people still made it. Hello guys, how are you? Gene, Vlad, Melinda, thank you for switching the camera on. David, be like David, Vlad, Melinda, and Gene, right? Roman is an idol too. I love that. How are you guys today? A week before Christmas. Hey Chelsea, how are you? Really, really well.
I think I'm
I think
on.
Okay.
you're trying to give us all little heart palpitations in regards to a
Yeah,
week before Christmas. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Chelsea.
Oh, I think I'm
Hi.
on twice somehow.
that's cool.
Did you share
So
your
we have you.
link with a friend?
No, that's okay.
That's okay.
New friend.
Okay, guys.
I don't see you twice.
No, I don't see you twice either. Bhakta Sanjay. Look, Sanjay doesn't wear his pajama jacket, right? Like,
Don't ask me to stand up.
we're joking because Sanjay's every morning at 9 a.m. on our comms call, and for him, he's on PST, so he's 2 hours like in front, behind us, right? So we're always joking he's wearing his pajama jacket every morning, the
Yeah,
same joke, right? But kind of the running gag. So.
yeah.
Hey guys, welcome to our weekly Thursday call. And I'm like really bummed that all of you are here. So thank you for spending an hour with us. And for today, I invited somebody I learned to know on a conference a couple of weeks ago, and I've seen him all over the place on Facebook, on all the groups. He's kind of a VIP in the place where he is, right? And in the space where he is. And I was so happy when he told me, "Hey, Robin, I would love more to share, nothing more than share my insights in the land space with you." And it's Mr. Rick Rauch, right? Like the German would say, right? Like every American would call it Rauch, right? But happy to
It's
have you, Rick.
definitely,
How are you today, man?
yeah, it's definitely German. I'm great. How are y'all doing?
Like everybody's here, man. So, Rick, let's kick it off directly. I'm a huge fan in like jumping into content and give us a little heads up for all the people that don't know you. Who are you? What do you do? And yeah, what's the niche you're filling in the land space? Like, give us a brief heads up about yourself, couple of minutes.
Yeah, sure. So my background is construction development. I did that for 25 years. I started out like in the field as a laborer, sweeping floors, and by the time I was done with that part of my life, I was a VP of construction development for a family office, managing $100 million portfolio. And I just got to a point to where I was just burned out with doing construction and development and just wanted to, a new challenge, a new chapter. And so I had been learning about land on the side. I did, I went the land geek route, took the course, learned all the materials, started buying land in all these secret counties, and quickly realized that it just wasn't the right fit for my skill set. And I needed something that was going to be a little bit more challenging. And so I actually, I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with John Jasniak. He's very big in the land space, especially in subdivides. He's kind of one of the OGs. He does a lot of stuff in West Texas. And so I reached out to John, sent him a direct message. We jumped on a call. I paid him, for about an hour of his time. He explained how subdivides work to me, and it just made sense based on my background and experience. And so I just went full force kind of into the subdivides. I still did some flips on the side, but my main focus was really just doing subdivides. So in our first year of, I'd say about 14 months, we did 7 subdivides and it was about $4 million in lot sales. So a value of lots, the value of the lots was about 4 million once we got done subdividing and doing improvements. That's not what we sold in the first 12 months, but we're actually down to about 1.6 million left in our inventory. And, some have been good and some have been okay and some have not been great. I mean, that's just the reality of the land space. But for the most part, we've made money on all of our deals and returned equity back to our partners and capital. And, we're always kind of just looking for the next right fit. 2024 was a little tough for most of us we have made some adjustments to our buy box and the type of projects that we're working on, for the next 24 months. But yeah, I mean that's kind of it in a nutshell. So construction development background, I did a little over 300 million while I was in that. Did restaurants, hotels, a lot of theming restaurants. I did entertainment, self-storage, strip malls, grocery stores. I mean, if you can probably think of it, I probably have built it. So gas stations. So that's just kind of my background. And again, I was able to take a lot of that experience and just kind of roll it forward into the land stuff.
You know what I really loved about that that what you said is that um, you just like looked in the land game with your skill set. You said that's not for me, like the classical flipping business was double closing secret counties and however you name it, right? And I think that's like so valuable. Like everybody, when you're in a point in your business that you don't feel it, right? That you feel, hey, like that's not for me. I think that's always like a good statement you can do because the secret sauce of the land game is you can play it in any direction, right? You can do subdivides, developments, you can do build houses, you can, I don't know, play like the financial game on the back end, right? Like with notes and hard money loans and all that. It's just like I think the really valuable part of that what you said is sometimes you need to question yourself like, hey, what's my space in the space, right? Because this is what I feel everybody does land a little bit different, especially that people that really do volume like you or other people like Ajay Chalmer, which is a friend of us, right? Or Callan, like everybody has this little like niche where he is in after he learned like the ground up thing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's well said. For me, it just very quickly kind of dawned on me like this is not a good use of my 25 years of construction and development experience because I think when I initially got into the land space, I thought initially that it would eventually take me back to development or some sort of, construction and it would be tied back into the land. And I think for me, it just wasn't challenging enough. I was used to running, 10 to $15 million projects with a lot of complexity, and managing large teams, being responsible for capital budgets and, delivering projects on time and dealing with operations. And, to go from that to, flips in Castilla County, it just wasn't resonating with me. It wasn't lighting me up. I wasn't fulfilled. And I had a conversation with one of my mentors, and who's a much older gentleman. And I mean, he just told me, he said, "Look, man, like I think you already know the answer to this question, but you, for you to think that you're going to be able to just walk away from something that you did for 25 years and start something new and not feel like that there's some part of that that needs to be involved or a part of this new journey, it's just not going to work. Like you have to." You can't reinvent yourself after you've got 20. You can reinvent yourself, but you can't reinvent yourself with the same success when you have 25 years of experience. So you need to figure out how to blend the two. And so that's kind of what I did.
I love that. I love that. So that was already really good juice in there. So man, let's turn a little bit on that what you're doing, right? We talked about your project when we met and you presented like a project to me too that where you're involved in, which I've absolutely loved, and probably we need to have a conversation about that too, right? You told me that this week, but let's jump a little bit into subdividing space, right? I always say like, hey, when you jump into subdividing space, it's a complete different game, right? That you play because there are other rules, other things you need to follow. Maybe walk us a little bit through like when we talk about subdivides, when you start, and let's maybe go from A to Z, right? When you start a project, right, you have a parcel coming across you. What's your process? What's your parameters? How do you look on this to decide, hey, is this a good deal or a bad deal?
Well, I think it's evolved over the last 16 months, quite honestly. In the beginning, when we
Yeah.
first got in, and land was still pretty hot and moving pretty regularly, and things were not sitting on the market very long. It was easy to go into a market and really just do like a quick CMA, and then maybe do a sell-through rate. and you could pretty quickly determine, what was a good part of that market to work in and where your buy price needed to be. That changed. Obviously, I think over the last, well, I don't think I know, we've seen a lot more saturation in the market, and so you have to be a lot more detailed when you go in and do a market analysis. So in addition to doing a CMA and then looking at sell-through rate, you also have to look at absorption rate when you're doing subdivides, because you're creating a lot of inventory in a small amount of time in a certain area. And so you need to make sure that the market can absorb those properties, because when you're doing subdivides, you typically have more money involved. There's typically interest if you have a bank or equity partners. And the idea is to get out of the debt phase as quick as possible and get into equity. So in the beginning, it was easy to look at like big properties, and you could very quickly get to a 2x just in your underwriting and understanding what the market was needing to what holes needed to be filled in that market. But as things have shifted, we've gotten way more granular with our underwriting. So again, just to kind of repeat what I'm saying. So CMA is absolutely critical. You have to get that from your realtor broker in the area. That CMA then needs to have like a heat map tied to it so that you can understand to make sure that that CMA matches the area and the zip code that you're possibly looking at working in. You need to understand the absorption rate. How long is it going to take you to sell these lots? How long are you going to possibly be holding the property? How much interest are you going to be burning while you're waiting to get into your equity phase? And then just making sure, something that we kind of did early on was when we go in to do a subdivide, we will look at, we'll look at an overall market as like a CMA. So we'll look at, the sell-through rate. So we'll look at, for that entire market, we'll look at the number of lots sold versus what is listed, and then that will give us a number. And then we will drill those down. We'll look at it from 1 to 2 acres, 2 to 5 acres, 5 to 10 acres, 10 to 20, 20 to 50 and above, right? And then we start kind of drilling down and finding out which lots are moving and more regularly, and what is sitting on the market the longest, what's the hardest to move. And then we will set our subdivide based on those lots. So in the past, we made the mistake of, well, we'll buy 100 acres and we'll just cut it into 10 acre lots. Well, you can do that, but you're also watering down your own product, and you're also saturating the market when you dump all 10 lots on the market at one time. Not that you should dump all 10 at once, because you shouldn't. But what you should do is you should look at offering multiple size tracts and opening up your buyer pool. And so it's just a little bit more of a strategic thought when you're going after these subdivides. And you also have to just think about, like, the more buyers that you can get to the property, and the bigger your buyer pool, the better success you're going to have in terms of selling those lots off. And the old saying of, like, one domino gets the whole bunch rolling. That's typically what it is. If you can get 1, 2, 3 lots sold early on in your subdivide, things will start. It typically takes care of itself. You have the ability to cause almost like a scarcity mindset around the subdivide as the lots start selling off.
Yeah. Man, there was so much like good
I know.
stuff in
Sorry.
that, right? Like that.
Sorry.
Like let's like rewind a little bit and walk it through, because like what Rick just said, in my personal opinion, is whatever you do, if you flip, if you wholesale, if you subdivide, if you entitle, there was so much juice in that, what everybody should do. Let's go a little bit into, you mentioned two things, and I think not everybody is really sure what that means. That are the terms sell-through rate and absorption rate, right? Let's maybe start with the sell-through rate, like, because when you Google that, you get like 12 definitions, what that means,
Sure.
that word, and how you define that, right? So let us walk a little bit through that. You said it's like you look at the sold lots versus the listed lots. In which time frame? What's typical, that what you're looking there for? Let's stick with that for a moment.
It used to be 12 to 24 months, but now it's more, it's 6 months and 12 months, and really 6 months, because the market has shifted so much in the past 12 months that we know about. There's more inventory, longer days on market. So I would say that, we're looking at 6 months, but even then, the problem with that is that number is skewed because the market has changed so much in the past 12 months. So that's going to also tie back to your CMA, which is your comparative market analysis from your realtor broker. Those two together are really going to help drive your thesis and what you think the best subdivide to put, the subdivide that you should possibly offer, and the types of lots that you should put on the market, based on the size, and what the CMA and the sell-through rate is telling you. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of, and I'm not saying this, I'm not trying to be dodgy, but it's kind of a moving target right now. Like I feel like the analytics, and kind of the way that you're underwriting, you're having to make some adjustments kind of on the fly as this, as the market shifts. But for us right now, 6 months is really what we're looking for. We'll look at 12 months, but it needs to have, I would say a 1.0 or better on sell-through rate.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you on that, right? Like, especially in markets like this, which is like the first time I think in 13 years, right? We had this shift from like a seller's market to a buyer's market, right? With a really scared buyer for whatever reason, right? There were elections, there were high interest rates and all that. So you just had less buyers. So the buyers were just like scared and moving their money, right? It was the same on the investor side. But I think it's the right thing to do, right? And who's on the comms call like every morning we do. Like I talk about that a lot. Like always look, what is the market doing right now? Because most of the time when you're like in the wholesale world, or when you made offers, right? Hey, your comms that you locked on, like when you were like going around with your seller for like half a year, 9 months until you negotiate finally with them on the contract, revisit your comps all the time, because what happens a lot of times, and this is what we see with deals we're working on, is when we get them submitted, hey, a year ago, your market data was totally right, but in today's market, we are probably 30, 40, 50% under, right? And I think that was really valuable. And especially when you go in a subdivide, because of the nature how the deal is, and we come to that in a bit, you deal with a lot of money, right? Like that you put in there and you play against the market. Let's talk about a second term. And I think like sell-through rate is, so who has heard the term sell-through rate before this call? Just like raise your hand real quick. Jean has, Chelsea, Melinda, right? A lot of other people didn't. But so let's do the second term you mentioned, and that was absorption rate. Let's talk a little bit through that. What do you mean by absorption rate? Unless we switch a light on while you explain that.
Yeah, so absorption rate is going to be the amount of time that you and that the market will take to absorb the lots that you are creating in your subdivision. And so let's say you have a property and you're going to, let's say it's 50 acres and you're going to create 8 lots. Well, what you're going to want to look at is based on the size of those lots that you're offering, is how many lots that size were sold over the past 12 months. And then, what is the average, time on, days on market? Because typically what you're trying to do is you're trying to project out how long are you going to end up holding these properties, and there's probably going to be debt or, interest tied to that. So it's important to understand, like, if I'm going to create 8 lots and I'm going to put them on the market, I need to make sure that I understand that depending on the size of those lots, which lots are more likely to probably sell or get sold more quickly, and be absorbed by the market based on the demand, versus which lots will I probably end up holding on to for longer, based on the absorption rate for that size lot. So and I think it's fair to say, like, in most cases, like, the smaller lots are typically going to move quicker. So we just finished selling out one of our subdivisions in Virginia, and that was 7 lots, and they were anywhere from 1 acres all the way up to 45 acres. And the smaller lots sold very quickly, and actually so did the largest lot that we had, the 40 acre. The ones that we had the hardest moving were the ones that were kind of like right there in the middle, which were like 12 to 15 acres. And the reason for that is because it was just those lots were just outside of where someone would be able to get bank financing, but also not low enough to where that they could pay cash themselves. So there's all these little factors that kind of come into play on the absorption rate, but Your realtor and your broker are going to be a great resource for that. That's where you're going to really drill down on your CMA, your sell-through rate, and then your absorption rate, kind of all three of those collectively.
Absolutely. I agree with you. So what I really like about that, what you say, Rick, is you think about the buyers first, right? You really look into when you move into a market, what is selling, right? And this is what I see happen a lot, like happening a lot in the space, right? A lot of people come in the industry, just send randomly kind of mailers and phone calls and text messages, but they never think about that stuff, what's making the money, right? What is selling? Who is buying stuff and what are the people buying, right? And a good friend or mentor of mine, he always says, Robin, you need to create products that people buy and not create a product and then find nobody to buy, right? So I really love that. So let's move a little bit ahead. So you do your market
I think
analysis,
that's
you yeah,
let me
go
let me
ahead.
just touch on that. I think that's a great point, Robin. So, and that's something that I definitely want to preach to people is don't try to be the market maker. There's no point of that. The only way that you would want to try to be the market maker is if you have paid cash for a property and you have money to burn and you are in no hurry to sell the property and you feel like that you are creating a market share that just doesn't exist yet, but you feel like that it could be of service in the area. The idea is just, follow what the numbers are telling you. Math doesn't lie, and neither do the CMA, the sell-through rate, and the absorption rate. Those numbers are very important and they're very critical, and they help you arrive at your thesis, and really understanding what you need to offer in terms of your subdivision and your lot sizes. Like that's just it. Like trying to overthink the process is where people make mistakes. I mean, the math is the math. Just follow the numbers.
I love that. That's really really great. Okay, so man, let's take it from there. You ran your numbers. You say, okay, I love that area. I want to create that product. Blah blah. How do you look on the lot itself? How does the due diligence process from your side look like? Hey, there you come across, you say like, hey, in that county, like it's a 5 acre parcels. I find a 100 acre tract, right, where I can produce 20 of them or whatever, but the absorption rate is good for them. Let's do a little bit theory. What happens next? Like somebody sends you a lot, or you find a lot, or you reach out to the owner, right? Like, what happens from there?
Well, assuming that we've already got our CMA and, let's say we've already looked at our market conditions and we understand, what's trading in the market. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out to the jurisdiction. Well, I'm actually probably just going to go on the jurisdiction's website and I'm going to download the subdivision regulations. I want to make sure
Mhm.
that I have a full understanding of what is going to be required to get a subdivision approved. In some cases, in some states, you have state exemptions, like plat exemptions, to where if you have, a certain size of, number of a certain size lot, in terms of the acreage size, then you don't have to go through a subdivision approval. That's very rare. In most cases, you're going to have to get some sort of at least a local, just like review, without having to go to a commissioner's court. In some cases, you will have to go through a commissioner's court approval. But I want to understand what is going to be the requirements for the subdivision in that jurisdiction, and then what is the time frame to get it approved, and then what resources do I need to bring in to help execute and get that approval in place. So, we'll just use Virginia as an example. So like in that case, it was Rocky Mount, Virginia, which is the county that I was working in. I had already done a subdivision there. So I already knew, like going into it, that I was going to be required to, if the lots were under a certain size, I was going to have to do a perk test. We would have to submit a preliminary subdivision, to the county or the reviewer, so they could provide comments first. And then I understood what the approval process was, and it was, 30 days basically. So just having those three pieces in mind and understanding that those were kind of the main hurdles, then I was able just to kind of put that in with my underwriting and understand what those costs were going to be, and then just help me make my decision on buying the property or not.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah, I think this is what I hear a lot. Let me ask you like one question that came in my mind right now. While you do all of that, how is your contractual situation with the seller?
Say that again.
How's your contractual situation with the seller while you do that, right? So you come across a lot, you make your CMA. Do you set it already under contract? Like, how do you do that? How are you working with the seller in doing that process right now?
I'm a big fan of spending a lot of time understanding, getting to know and understand the market before I'm going to actually start even sending mailers or doing cold calling, texting. I want to make sure that the market's a right fit.
Hmm.
The way that I have an underwriter, and so the way that I don't spend a lot of time like trying to do a lot of due diligence or feasibility. I try to do that on the front end in the market. So I want to understand the subdivision regulations. I want to understand what the sell-through rate is. I want to understand what's trading and selling in that market. And so when I find something, I will immediately just put it under contract and do, 30 to 45 days of due diligence feasibility. And I always have a clause in there that allows me to back out for, whatever reason that, I deem necessary. And so we have language in our LOI or our PSA to where, we at least will have 30 to 45 days. If you can get more, it's ideal. I mean, if you can get 60, 90, 120 days, that's absolutely what you want to do. But I'm not going to waste the chance of missing on a good opportunity or somebody snapping up a piece of property when I know that I put myself in a situation where I can get my money refunded back to me on my earnest money if I need to. So, and most of the stuff that I bought, Robin, has mostly been on market, quite honestly. I've done a couple of deals that have been off market that were pocket listings or leads that came from my realtor broker relationships, but a majority of the stuff that I have bought has been on market.
Interesting. So let's go into that a little bit. And I hear that a lot, right? That's what other people probably hear. Maybe you're sick of the game of like sending mailers and having cold calling teams and all that, right? And Jean is laughing. She knows what I'm talking about, right? When you say on market opportunities, right? So that means for me, hey, you're looking for opportunities where you can just like set something that is today was a realtor on the market, like under contract, and then what are you looking on your exit strategy, like when you vet that deal? I mean, you know your market, you know that you have 100-acre lots and you know the 5 acres are absorbed, so you want to create 20 of them. You know all of that. Um, I guess the question is like how I lost it, guys. I lost it. What do you want to say? Can somebody help me right now?
I'm typically looking for a 2x. So if I buy something for a
2x, yeah.
hundred, if I buy something for 100, I need to make 100 net profit at the exit. So I mean, you can obviously lower those parameters a little bit if you want to, but your own personal money. But in most cases, I'm using other people's money. And so just to make sure that I am covering myself and my basis and my investors, I'm always shooting for a 2x or better if I can. So, and again, the quickest way to do that is you've already got an understanding of your market when you go into it, and you've already got your underwriter built in for that market. You already understand your comps. Like I said, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but this stuff is very, very important. Like I can't stress enough that you need to make sure that you have a CMA, you understand the sell-through rate, and you understand the absorption rate. Those three are so direly important and critical. You can't focus on the money. You can't focus on what you're going to make. You have to focus on those factors.
I love that. I love that. So, and thank you for rescuing me there
Well,
because that was exactly the question I had,
and
right?
I
What are you
say
looking?
that I say that for the group because I've made those mistakes. Like I convinced myself that something was a good deal and it wasn't, or I've maneuvered my underwriter to appease what I think that the property should be worth or what it should make. So don't do that to yourself, is what I'm getting at.
Who has been in that trap? Raise your hand when you're guilty like me that you made a deal to make a deal, and even if you were like, that's like I was guilty like that, and I burned a lot of money on that way too. When you say a 2x net profit, is that after all the costs you have for like surveys, perk tests, and all that? So is it literally that, and like debt and all that stuff?
So a 2x would include purchase costs, carrying costs, improvements, and then commissions. But that wouldn't include like equity splits or anything like that. So
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I get that.
If
Okay.
I let's just
So
we'll just use round numbers. So if I bought something for 100, and let's say I was into the whole thing for 140, I'm going to be looking to be at 280 in lot sales.
280 in lot sales. Guys, did you get that? This is the way of doing making money, right? This is the way of making money. So, what I like so far is like really or I think your biggest message, and I really love that you say that because I preach that all the time, is really know your market, right? And then really look on the profits you make. Plan that out. Like guys like Drake who make millions of dollars in this industry, right? They look, what do I want to make? And everybody I personally know that's a big player in real estate. Like I talk with another guy, we do some
Launching a webinar.
we sell entitled lots to these people, right? And that guy, because he buys them, he makes them, he wants shovel ready lots to start like pushing dirt on them, right? And he came to me and said, like, Robin, like, when I sell them, I look on this hundreds and thousands of lots I do a year to make $15,000 in net profit on every lot I do, like after everything is paid, right? And that was like a number that I didn't need to get that out of his like mind somewhere. No, he said, this is what I want to make, and this is how we calculate every project, and this is where we make your red line, right? Because this is what I see all the time in the flipping business too, right? Hey, you have this lot, it could be worth 100, right? You have this seller, you really like them. You think like normally you could offer 50, right? But then you're talking, and like the auntie is sick, and they need some more money, and the deal is so pretty, and the view is pretty, and this is pretty, and suddenly you offer them like 75 or 80, right? And then you're like your comp, so maybe not 100, it's 90, right? Then you have some closing costs. You have maybe a funder to pay a realtor, and suddenly you are like in the red, right? And this is what I really like about that, what Rick said. Hey, you need to really calculate from day one, what will my profit be? We have that, for example, we don't touch a lot where we after all costs, like in the wholesaling side of our business, where we after all costs make in minimum $30,000, like after we pay the realtor, the sales part, the acquisitions team, the funding team, like everybody. When that's not when everything is paid and I don't get $30,000, we don't touch it because it's not worth my time when I look on the sales cycle. And that is something you should define. Better do less deals and make informed decisions about this deal than doing all of them. And I really love that. So thank you for pointing that out, Rick
Well,
today.
you've got to have non-negotiables when it comes to that, and really, like we touched on earlier, I like to think about the end in mind, and some, markets change. Market conditions are sometimes they're just out of our control. I mean, you brought it up, like this past year was tough, and really the last 6 months were even the worst because everybody was just holding their breath about this election. And a lot of us got crushed the last 6 months, I included. I mean, just being full honesty with this group here, like, we're going to make about a third this year of what we projected to make in profits. That's pretty
Yeah.
significant. And
Yeah.
that hurts. But when you make good decisions in terms of when you buy these deals and you underwrite them and you have your non-negotiables and you hold the line, if you get into a situation where you have to liquidate a property because you have allowed yourself enough room and opportunity, you can get out of it without with less pain than what you probably would if you had forced the deal. So, I've done that in the past. Robin just touched on that. Like, just don't force it. If it doesn't, I mean, the idea on like subdivides and even like flips or anything else is you just need to get to the no as quick as possible and move on. And you got to remove all emotion from these. These are just transactions. Like, it's not going to change your life one way or another.
And I love that you're saying that. It's like the emotional attachment sometimes too, because then you're stuck in that deal and you probably bought that deal, right? And I mean, 30% of the profit he projected, let's get back to that, how fast that goes, right? So he buys for 140, he wants to sell for 280, right? So he wants to sell that property for 280,000. So when the market turns down by 20% in the time frame where he's doing all of that, so it goes from 280,000 down by $60,000 to 220. Suddenly his profit is not $140,000 anymore, right? His profit is $80,000. And that means his profit is down by, who is good in math? I think it's around 40%, right? This is what he says, and it goes so quickly. And especially when you start your journey, like in subdivides and entitlements and all that, guys, give yourself some space for grace. Even in the wholesaling world, people were doing that for years, right? We get these properties, we look on them and say, hey, look, have you looked at this comp and at this comp? Have you looked at this in the market, what's happening, and at this in the marketing? You always need to build yourself some security buffer in there, right? That helps you to survive the decisions that you make that are not that good. And we made them all, guys. I lost $10,000s, $100,000s on decisions like that. And that's normal. This is what we grow out of, and you will not make bad decisions twice, probably, right? Um, Rick, tell us a little bit. You talked, and this is like where I mean, in the subdivided space, there are multiple ways of doing that, right? You talked about plat exempts, and we could plat exempt states and all that. But when you go actually into it, and we have this beautiful piece of dirt, 100 acres, right? And you want to take it down, is it just that you take it down and sell it off, or do you do improvements, or do you need to think about stuff like that too? Can you bring us a little bit into that?
Absolutely. So yeah, so again, I'm always thinking about the end in mind, which is my buyer. And uh, ideally, there's a couple of things that we like to do. In addition to forcing equity by subdividing the property. You buy something, let's say something's 10,000 an acre, and then by the time you subdivide it, it's now worth 20,000 an acre. You also want to create appreciation. So the way that you do that is through some improvements. Whether it's cleanup, which could be bush hogging, making it look nicer at the road frontage, putting in floorboard entry. You could do, animal husbandry fencing around the property. Sometimes we do gated entrances. Sometimes we'll put gravel drives in with, uh, uh, and like the culvert pipe. It really just depends. So, and this goes kind of back to like your CMA, your comparative market analysis. When I'm looking at those comps, and let's say I'm shooting to get that 20,000 per acre price, I want to look at comparables in terms of what improvements were being offered on that property. And so ideally what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to either marry up to what the market is telling me and what my broker realtor is telling me that sellers are looking for. Um, and again, we're not trying to create the market. We're not trying to create the market here. So in some cases, you could go overboard and spend way too much money and time and improvements and actually hurt your project. And in some cases, you can just get by just doing the bare minimum. Sometimes you have great road frontage and the properties are beautiful, and you can just do a simple subdivide and maybe clean up the front and make it a little bit more presentable. One thing that we do like to do is at the very least on a subdivide, and we'll just, we'll just say like a 30-acre subdivide, and we're going to cut it into 3 or 4 tracks, is we will cut paths into the property and we will open up a little build area, a little build site, because the problem is like, in a rural area in particular, especially if it's like heavily wooded or lots of trees, buyers, they don't have a vision. They can't see what the end product is going to look like. They can't understand what their tiny home is going to look like, or their mobile home, or their custom home, whatever they're building there. Or maybe it's just a campsite or whatever they're going to use it for. So I like to think about, I'm married and I have a wife and I have kids and I have dogs. So if I was going to take my family with me to go look at a piece of property that I was thinking about purchasing for a long-term investment, what does that need to look like? Well, it needs to feel safe. So it needs to be cleaned up. I need to at least be able to get my buyer into the property so that they can walk onto the physical property and get an actual vision. And then again, that's why. So we'll cut paths in, and then we'll pick an area on each lot if we can, where we open up a small area like a build site. And you can do that pretty minimally cost wise. That's probably the least and most cost effective thing that you can do is bush hogging and cutting paths in and open up a little build site. More expensive is going to be if you put roads in. So if you put like a private road in to access multiple lots on the property, that's going to be more expensive. That's probably anywhere from, it could be $25 to $50 a lineal foot for your road, depending on how wide it is. You could do, like I said, gated or floorboard entry at the front. You could just do a gravel driveway with culverts, which actually makes a really big impression for buyers. So again, the idea is like I'm thinking about my buyer and the end game. So I want my buyer to get on the property and walk the property. And so those are just a couple of little things that you can do. And cost effective wise, the bush hogging and cutting the paths in and opening the build spot, that is by far the best bang for your buck. Um, we've put in $100,000 private, gravel roads before that are 24 foot wide and 6 inches thick, and they take a month to install, and there's clearing involved, and that's a big that's a big expense, and you're banking on that road is going to pay off in the long run. And I've had cases where we put those roads in and it didn't make a bit of difference. We weren't able to capture any of that money back. So you need to just, again, this is one thing I stress too, and I didn't talk about this earlier, is like when I'm looking at a market and I've identified something that I think is a good fit, and maybe I have a couple of pieces of property that I'm thinking about in that market, and I've maybe got one or two things under contract, or we've put something under contract, I will physically go to the property. So you need to get in an airplane, you need to get in your car, you need to do whatever you need to get to that property, and you need to physically go put your eyes on it, and then you need to drive around and look at your competition. You need to look at what other subdivides are doing. You need to look at what those improvements are. You need to look at what their access is onto the property. And you want to try to stay within, what the market is telling you in terms of what to offer on improvements.
I got like I try to keep up with all that juice he's sharing, who's in the same position, right? Like, I mean, two things stick out here for me, right? You said like I'm a husband, right? I have a wife, I have kids, I have a dog, right? And I always bring that example, right? We have like a couple of husbands here and I think a couple of wives, right? Let's start with the wives. Has your husband brought you someone in your life anywhere where you said, "Oh my God"? And the guys, did you bring your wife anywhere sometime, someone in your life where they said to you, "My God, what did you do there, Sanjay, right? What are we doing here, right?" I did that a couple of times. And this is what happens with these lots, right? No matter, like, again, if you're wholesaling or if you're subdividing, like, hey, you send out a Google Maps link and expect that guy, David, right, who you're talking to, is bringing his wife Stephanie out there on the weekend, and they don't even find that lot because there are just trees everywhere, right? And this is what I loved about that, what Rick said. Like sometimes, especially when you take lots down and when you do subdivides, we talk about significant investments, and I want to get into that a little bit because man, we I think there was like so much that we shared today, but um, always think a little bit, what does a potential buyer see when he comes out to your lot? Probably most of you are out of state, right? Are out of, maybe like me, like most of the time I'm out of the country, right? Like, but when you do like Rick, he takes down a subdivision that he sells not for 280,000, it's more $2.8 million, and you take down something for $1 million, put $400,000 into it. You want to go out there, right? Like you want to secure your investment, right? And especially like in wholesaling deals, that can make sense too. I always remember when I took down my first $400,000 property before I bought it, I flew all the way from Germany to Florida to Miami, from Miami to Tallahassee, jumped in Tallahassee in the car, and like drove to Gadsden County, which is close to that, drove like somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And walked like 120 acres. And I was like, okay, what do you do then? I mean, I had the luck that I met my realtor and he drove me to Walmart so we could buy snake boots and all that crap, right? He told me that's necessary. I was not aware of that, right? But you want to get like an impression of that, what you're selling. And this is the second thing you mentioned, Rick, and I want to point that out. Become a specialist in your market, no matter what you do. You need to know, like in your area, what is the competition doing? How does the area look like? How does it function? Because sometimes on this side of the highway, everything is nice. On this side of the highway, everything is not so nice, right? You have a lot of jerks here and a lot of nice people over there, right? So it's really you want to know your area and you want to have your teams in that area that understand that area that you meet, especially when you're working it over and over and over again. And I love that. Thank you, Rick, Rick, for sharing that.
So let me make a point really quick. So my first subdivide was 30 acres, and the purchase price was $77,000. So I know that Robin's throwing around some bigger numbers, and that's fine. We've done some of those too. If I'm being honest, the most successful subdivides are the smaller ones. Like that's just the reality of it. And so like this one, for example, we bought it for 77. We spent with the survey, with the perk tests, and with cleaning up, doing the bush hogging and cutting the paths in and cutting the little build areas in. I think I was in it for $16,000, so $93,000. That subdivide sold out for $200,000. Is a 2x, and we had very little
That's
money in
great.
it. So I don't want you to think that you have to be in like the big game or the big
Yeah,
you don't like and if anything what I will tell you is the bigger the number, the bigger the headache, the bigger the stress. So you can easily buy, 10, 15, 20, 30 acre property and keep your numbers down and figure out what the market demand is. So let's say you could put a couple of 2, 3, 4, or 5 acre lots on, or maybe you have a mixed bag of those lot sizes. You can do minor improvements, bush hogging, cleanup, cut paths and trails, and then you can at least, get some experience under your belt and get comfortable doing subdivides. But these are not overly complicated. The big thing is just understanding your numbers in your market, like Robin was saying. You just need to make sure that you can, the idea is you're shooting for a 2x. And you can do that with a $50,000 property. You can do that with a $20,000 property. If the market is showing you that there is a need for subdivisions and a certain size tract in that market. So again, I mean, I would say the takeaway is like, yes, you can have bigger paydays if you're willing to take down like a million, $2 million deal, but there's a lot of stress that comes with that. And I'm here to tell you, like, I've lost a lot of hair in the last year and a lot of sleepless nights. And I always recommend just starting small, get comfortable, and just get to a point to where if you're ever in a situation where you feel like you can take one of those big deals down, and the math makes sense, and the market is strong, and we're not in an election year, I would go for it. But again, the small stuff is fun, and that's really so. That I brought that up early on. It's like our buy box has changed. We're not doing anything over 50 acres right now. I'm just not doing it. There's just too much risk involved right now with carrying that debt and then having equity partners, and then just the interest, carrying interest on that stuff.
I love that you said that. And to be honest, my one of my first subdivides was like we bought it. It was a parcel in Atlanta. We bought it for 60, right? And that was one of the first ones I did by myself. And in the end, like the market, it was before in the market shift, right? And we calculated in the beginning a sell-off on 210, and we just needed to put like $10,000 in there for the surveying and purchase and like it was in
Right.
the city, right? So it was probably everything you shouldn't do, but we worked with the city, worked it out, right? And created that. And then the market broke together, but we still like we're selling them off. They needed a while to sell now, but over a year we made like $150,000 on that. That's a 2x too, right? So and the
Amazing.
risk in that is like manageable, right? We don't talk about millions of dollars, right? Like start small. I sign off on that. But talking about money, Rick, how do you structure that deals? Because I think you don't have, I have seen like a couple of your projects and some of them are seven-figure projects. Like, tell us a little bit, how do you structure the deals? Because I mean, we all have like probably big bank accounts, right? But they're not that big that we can do all of that, right? Tell us a little bit more. How do you structure deals from a financial end?
Yeah. So I mean, my situation's a little different where I didn't have a ton. I mean, when I left my W-2, I knew that I had, X number of dollars in the bank. And so my thought was, okay, well, I've got, 6 months of savings and then I've got another 6 months of like emergency fund, if something happens. So I have a year to figure this thing out. And so, my mentor was like, you need to, use other people's money where you can. I mean, like the best way to do that is obviously just making sure that you have strong underwriting, strong market analysis, and be able to return a nice equity percentage to investors. And so in terms of the way that we structure our deals is every deal is its own separate LLC. So it gets its own separate LLC. It's a partnership LLC with our investors. And we do a separate bank account, a separate EIN, a separate QuickBooks account. So everything is separate. It's its own entity. And so what we'll do is we'll underwrite a project and then we'll take it to our investors, and we have like a list of investors and we'll send it out to multiple, groups of people. and they'll, maybe one or two or three will reach back out and say, yes, we're interested. And so then we start talking through the deal specifics. And in most cases, the way that our deals are structured is we have no money in the deal, but we give up 50% of the profit. So let's just say like that, the one that we were just talking about, the small one. So, my investors put up all the money on the $93,000 and then we split the profit 100%. So the way that that works is it's set up as a waterfall. And so the first thing is the debt gets taken care of. So the initial, $93,000 that they put in was what got paid first. And then once they were whole, then we had a equity split. Um, uh, it was an 80-20 up to a certain percentage, and then it went 50-50. So, there's all kinds of ways that you can structure and create these deals, but the easiest way, I would, is just obviously set up a new LLC for each partnership that you're going to do, each land deal in terms of a subdivide, and then just make sure you're not commingling it with your regular business. God forbid, like, your subdivide doesn't go well and you've got to, bankrupt that LLC or something like that.
Yeah, I love that. So I think that's a great message too, because even if you have that money, a lot of times it doesn't make sense to put all your money in one deal, right? Even if your ROI is insane, but you risk a lot too. You always want to be diversified. And the good thing is, especially when you're new in this game, right? You can find partners that have more experience when you have the deal, that help you maneuvering through that deal, that will help you like getting through that deal. And hey, you give up a little bit of your profit, but they bring up the money. They help you structuring it. You can learn and watch from the sideline, right? So and I prefer, like, meanwhile, like in there where I feel comfortable, I go for that, like wholesaling, taking shit down, selling it for more, right? This is like where I always go for that because it's cheaper. But like when I do subdivides, when we do entitlements, I work with partners that are more experienced than we are, that are brilliant operators like Rick, right? That know how they did, and they come in with their whole bunch of experience, and in the end, you will have less headaches, sleep much better, and will make more money because they will give you all the red flags up front that you don't see. So I really like that. Um, Rick, is there any way that you partner with people? Can people contact you? Give us a little bit, like, is there anything where the group can come back to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, I mean, to your point, yes, we do partner with people all the time. We have like a set of parameters that we would want, for you guys to meet in term for us to look at a deal. What I can do, Robin, is I can provide that to you after the call separately, and you can send it out. So we have like a deal qualifier, if you will, couple of steps. Basically, we want you to have done like your own market analysis. You two have underwritten the property, pull together the CMA. What are your sell-through rate numbers? What is the absorption rate? And then if the deal makes sense, then we can come on and we can structure it a few ways. Like we could, you basically put the money in, or we could bring the investors into the deal, and then we can actually operate the deal, and then have you ride shotgun with us, and then that way you can actually learn and go through the whole process.
I love that. I love that. Hey,
And then
you have an email address like where people can contact you or something like that, or
I
shall we
do,
send that
and then
out?
yeah, and then I also wanted to just share with everybody, and I mean, we can put this in the chat, but if you go to reioptimize.com/Rick, so that basically what you can do is you can get a full case study on one of our deals, and you can actually look at the entire deal from start to finish, and it'll give you a better line of sight in terms of like what the subdivide process looks like from the beginning to the end. And it has all the details in there. Like we pull the curtain back, you get to look at all of it. Again, that's reioptimize.com/Rick. And in addition to that, Callan Faulkner and I, who I work with Callan on a couple of deals, we're going to be doing a master class in a few weeks on subdivides. And so we'll be pulling back the curtain and doing like a Zoom live, just like this one here.
I love that. I love that. And yes, I think you're partners with Callan, right? You work a lot together. You see these guys
Yes.
always hanging out together, and I think they have two brilliant brains. So you want to be in that Subdivide course when they do that. I just heard nothing but well, but when you do it, I will be there and watch you guys and see what you're doing. We have
Yeah, we usually,
5:58. Would you?
oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
was gonna say, yeah, we just actually just finished like a 10-week course, and so, we took everybody through the entire training. We implemented AI a lot. There's actually we have an AI like I think like Callan and Rick in there that actually has all the course material. So you're able to go into that actually AI assistant and actually you can ask it any question. It's going to answer, provide answers back to you just like we would, Callan or myself, on how we look at deals, how we structure deals, any questions you might have about a subdivide, which is really cool. So Callan built all that out. Obviously, that's her expertise, but yeah. So I mean, it's very hands-on. We're very thorough, very detailed, and there's a ton of resources in there.
Great. I love that. So we're going to send out that resources. We're going to send out that link. Rick, if you don't mind, let's run like 3, 4 minutes over and open that up for a Q&A. Guys, don't be shy. Switch your microphone on. Raise your hand if there's something you ever wanted to ask Rick. Right? Do it right now. You have the chance to do so. And otherwise, I say thank you for all this insight. That was like a brilliant conversation. From my end, I learned a lot. I made a bunch of notes. I hope you guys did too. And yeah, let's open up for Q&A. Is there anything you want to ask Rick?
Not all at once.
Hey Rick, this is Mark. I got a question.
Sure, Mark.
Um, it seems like, I mean, besides sell-through rate and absorption rate, the other key is that we need an area that the price per acre is going up as we get the parcels smaller. And I've just found, at least some of the areas I've worked in the past, it's kind of more of a flat price per acres, and just it's not as a good spot to subdivide. So I guess my question is, do you have any tips or tools that you use to find those areas where, it's the most advantageous to subdivide?
I mean, really, there's no secret sauce. I mean, you literally just have to get on like realtor.com and Redfin and go in there and just basically create the sell-through rate tables for yourself. So you can create like an Excel, and you can do like the overall market, and then you can start breaking it down 1 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 50, 50 and above. And you can start plugging those numbers in just based on what you're seeing on listings and then solds. And then that's when I go back to a realtor broker and I ask for a CMA to support my own findings or my thesis and my sell-through rate tables that I've created. There's no sauce. I mean, like it's just drilling down and looking at numbers like that's and understanding that market.
Love that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
I mean, and again, like we talked about, like you can't force a square peg into a round hole. So if you can't buy something for, let's just say, let's say if you can't buy, let's say 20 acres for 5,000 an acre, and then break it down into, fives and tens and double that in the acreage price, then I just move on. Like I'm not gonna get a bunch of brain damage on it. I'm just gonna move on to the next market and find where that market exists, and it should exist in moat. And I'm gonna say that majority of markets that will tend to play out a lot better for you, but there are just some markets where it just doesn't work, and that's okay. But and again, it's going to be just understanding like what are the smaller size tracts that are really moving and what are they bringing per acre, and then kind of like backing into that number based on the parent tract that you need to find.
That makes
Love
sense.
that.
Thank you.
Cool. So
All right,
one more
this is
question
Sanjay.
from Vlad. Okay, let's do Sanjay and Vlad. If you have that 5 more minutes, Rick, is that okay?
Oh yeah, we're good.
Okay,
Yeah,
Sanjay, then go ahead, and then we do
I've
Vlad after that.
got plenty of time to answer questions for you guys.
Okay. Rick, I understand it's gonna be very per deal is not gonna be standard answer, but what approximately time you take from beginning to end of the buying and splitting and selling, approximately?
Oh, great question. So it's going to depend on the amount of acres that you're buying, the number of tracts that you're going to be splitting into. So ideally, typically, you're looking at 9 to 12 to potentially 18 months. So I would always start with 12 months when you're doing your underwriting, and realistically, you probably should look at 18 months because of the way that the market has been the last year. Um, and the way that you can kind of mitigate some of that in terms of like, so here's what I like to do is, and this is just kind of a cheat code for everybody here. Most people, when they get a subdivide under contract, and let's say you know you're going to move forward with it. So that's where we're at right now. So I've got the deal locked up. My underwriting looks good. The subdivision regulations are friendly. I am immediately, while I'm in that due diligence feasibility period, and I know that I'm going to move to close, I immediately start assembling my team. I'm going to get my surveyor on board. I'm going to get my, again, if we have to perk a property, I'm not saying that that's always going to be the case. Let's just assume you have to perk a property. So I'm going to have my soil scientists lined up. I'm going to have everybody on go. And ideally, if I know and I have a good enough feeling about the fact that, yes, we are going to close and this is going to be a good deal, I'm going to start that process before I even close. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my surveyor loose and have him go ahead and do a draft subdivide that we can send to the county and have them take a look at and provide comments on. I'm going to have my soil scientist guy lined up and ready to go that day one after I close, he is on site perking the property because his reports have to go into the actual survey, and then all of that documentation gets submitted to the county together for the lots that require the perking or whatever. So the more stuff that you can have ready to go or already have the boxes checked when you close, the quicker you're going to speed up your process in terms of getting your subdivision completed, recorded, and then you're going to be able to go to market. The other thing too that I like to start doing is we like to start pre-marketing properties if we can. So once I have a subdivision draft in place and I know that the county is going to sign off on that, we will go to the realtor broker and say, hey, go ahead and start marketing the property, or at least get the marketing materials ready to go, start putting the feelers out, start, trying to see if we can get some buyers interested. And then again, when we close day one, like you're already ahead of the curve. The problem is that, in the past, what I've seen with, other investors is, they wait till they close and then they start all the process of going through the subdivision. And then by the time they get through the approval process and they've done all their improvements, they're 90, 100, 120, 150 days already in, and they haven't even put anything on the market yet.
Yep. Right. Thank you.
Steve, you're asking about when reaching out on the market deals, are you submitting range offers or neutral offers and doing CMAs? On market deals, I mean, I'm typically having my realtor broker make those, having those conversations with the listing agent. And in most cases, like especially with today's market right now, we will offer 50% all day long as a starting conversation. So if somebody's got it listed for $100,000 and it's been on the market for 6 months, I'm going to offer $50,000 and just see, how motivated they are to sell. It doesn't hurt to ask. Don't ever feel like you're offending somebody because you're not.
That's what I was going to ask you, Rick, because I was going to ask you what you start your offers at, because I'm seeing properties and they're listed up way high, and I'm thinking, gosh, can I offer them that much less?
Sure, you can. You can
Yeah.
offer anything you want to. All they can say
Yeah.
is no, and then
Yeah.
you just move on. But they also
Yeah.
might come back and say, you know what, I can't do that, but can you, let's say it's 100,000 and you offer 50. Could you do it for 60? Yeah, you probably could, especially if you're forcing a 2x on equity and appreciation. You definitely
Yeah.
could do 60% all day long. You probably could
Yeah.
go as even high as 70%. It's probably on the edge of what I would do, but I would have to have strong sell-through rate and absorption rate to do that. But yeah, I mean, again, the market is saturated with property listings right now, guys. In every county, in every state, all across this country, there is more land for sale right now than there has been in the last, I think, 3 or 4 years. And if you look at days on market and then expired listings, those people are raising their hand. They're saying, I want to sell my property. You don't have to send a mailer. You don't have to text them. You don't have to cold call them. You don't have to nurture them. They are ready to sell. So make offers.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So that was like a really great advice. You can do marketing for zero. I hear that. And we see that we see it the same, right? Like across the country, the number of listings out there is fucking crazy in the moment. Vlad, you had a question too, right, brother? Hope you're doing well.
I do. Thank you. Rick, thank you for your time. I have a
Yeah,
quick
happy to be
question.
here.
Thank you. When you approach landowners, do you approach them like with a benefit-oriented approach or a collaborative approach so they would be open to subdividing their property?
You certainly can. So it's a little bit more complex when you get into like a JV like that. The way that you structure the deal, you need to make sure that there's language in the contract to where, first and foremost, that your interest in the deal is protected, that they're going to provide release of liens as you sell off lots, which is going to be very important and critical. And then also, too, you need to make sure that at some point in time, they're not going to change their mind halfway through the deal after you've already spent money on a survey and improvements, and then they decide they want to keep the property for themselves or sell it off themselves. So you just need to make sure that I use a local real estate attorney and make sure that you structure that deal correctly to protect your interest. But yeah, there's plenty of landowners that are willing to do that. I mean, you know, in most cases, you can sell them on the fact that, hey, listen, if you'll hold the note and hold the property, I'll increase the value of the property. I'll pay for the improvements. I'll pay for the survey. I'll increase the value of the property, and then we can just split the profits. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to tell them what I mean, you can give them an idea of what the property will probably be worth when you're done, but what you don't want to do is ever lock yourself into any specific number.
Okay,
How
thank you,
I
Rick.
love
That's
how I
the way that you
love to
protect
do.
your, yeah, the way that you protect yourself on that. I mean, the way that you structure that is it's just it's based on the equity split. Like that's it. The equity is the equity split. Like that's it. There's no number tied to it.
So it's a
Let me
percentage.
so how I negotiated that in the back in the days, right? That I said, hey, you know what? You give me a 15% discount on your original on your asking price, and we approximately do like 10-20% more than that when we do that. Like, are you open to do that? That happened 2 times and it worked great. Well, so we kept him, right? Gave him an upside that we like were looking. Hey, I don't know, like let's run numbers, right? His asking price was 1 million. I told him, hey, give it to me for 850. And we put that together. I work the property and we will give you approximately $1.2 million back, right? This is how we structured the deal. And we made that in direct numbers, right? So I was working against a number. It was cheaper than any debt I ever take. It was cheaper than any equity I ever did, right? Because I just needed to come in with development money, right? And what was like $100,000. So that was really a good deal. And
Yeah, it,
guys,
yeah, people I think there's like a mental block where people think, like I can't, there's no way somebody would say yes to that, or I can't offer that, or oh my gosh, that's what an absurd thought. Anything is possible. You just got to ask. I mean, that's it. I mean, all anybody can say is no. That's it. But there's so many ways to creative finance or put these deals together. And again, like me and Robin touched on a minute ago, and I know that everybody in this room has seen it. Like the market is saturated with land right now. Like it is not every area is experiencing that, but the majority of the country is experiencing that.
good.
There are deals to be had out there.
I love that. With that said, let's wrap it up. 6:10 in CST. You're in Texas too, Rick, right?
Yes, I'm just
Okay.
outside of San Antonio.
It's San Antonio, right? So, like, I think we say good night here from Texas. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Rick, for bringing all that wisdom and light into our brains. And yeah, give him like maybe a little two clap, right? And just say Merry Christmas to everybody who I will not say
Thank you.
before that anymore. And see you on the other side next year. Bye bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye from Texas.
Thank you.